Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have my 1 month 1 palette update for July. So I'm going to share with you what palette I'm going to be using for the month of July, but I'm also going to share with you my thoughts on my June palette. So let's get right into that. My June palette was my Urban Decay Naked palette. This is the original Naked palette if you are unfamiliar, and this is what it looks like. So I have a lot of thoughts about this. I was really hoping after using it exclusively for a month I would have a hard decision on whether or not I wanted to keep it or what I thought about it, and unfortunately I'm still very conflicted. About a week into using this, I posted on Instagram that I was really leaning towards decluttering it. And at that point I was, but in the next week or so I really fell in love with the shade Smog right here. Doing a look with that, I would do Smog on the inner 2/3 of my lid and Dark Horse on the outer third, and then plus using like Naked and Buck in the crease and those types of things. So that was one look I fell in love with. I really love that look. I think Smog is a beautiful bronze shade, and I really don't have anything else like it. I thought I would, since I have so many neutral shadows, but going through my other shades I really don't have anything like that. So I kind of became really conflicted on whether or not I wanted to keep this, because when it comes down to it, I only really like half of the shades in this palette. So I'm going to go through shade by shade, explain how I feel about it, and then let you know kind of where I'm at with everything. So I really like the shade Virgin. It's a really nice light shimmery shade. It's very similar to Sin, but Sin is a little bit more glittery, I would say, and I love Sin. I used to have a single of Sin, and I would pair that with my Urban Decay Pulp Fiction palette all the time. That's a matte palette, so I would just add some Sin to my lid, and it was my favorite kind of go-to easy everyday look. So I decluttered the single I had of Sin since I had it in this palette. So that's another reason I kind of want to keep this, because I love Sin. So one of the most common looks I did this past month with this palette was very similar to the look I did with my Urban Decay Pulp Fiction palette, only I would use this palette. So I would go in with another kind of light shade. Usually I would use this matte cream shade. I really wish there was another matte in the Naked palette that was lighter like this. I think that would make me like the palette a little bit more. So I would go in with that, kind of set my primer, put it from the lash line to the brow bone, then use Naked as a transition crease shade, and then Buck in the outer part of my crease just to deepen it up a little bit, and then I would add Virgin or Sin all over the lid. I tried to do that look with Sidecar as well, and I love the color of Sidecar, but the fallout with Sidecar is just unreal. I never want to use Sidecar again. I think when I first got this palette, Sidecar was one of my favorite shades, and I don't know if I just didn't care about, like, I didn't realize there was glitter all over my face, but I applied it wet the one time the past month I used it, and there really wasn't a lot of fallout, so I was like, oh, like, I can totally make this work. But by the end of the day, I had glitter on my cheeks, I had it on my nose, I had it on my forehead. I don't even know how it got everywhere, so I'm kind of like, no thank you, Sidecar. I don't need that glitter in my life. Like I said, with this palette I use Naked and Buck in the crease every single time, since they're really the only options. And so for that reason I feel like if I was going to pan this palette, like, those two would be gone before, and then I would have all these lid shades left over. Because I really prefer a matte crease shade. I will do a more shimmery if I'm like going out at night, but during the day I just don't like to have shimmer in my crease. Half Baked is a nice gold. I'm kind of meh about that shade. I'm not a huge gold eyeshadow fan, but that's a nice one. I like it a lot better than the gold in the Lorac Pro. But my favorite kind of golds are a little bit less yellow than this. My favorite gold, I think, is this one from Ardency Inn, which I kind of decluttered, but when I was thinking about getting rid of my Naked palette, I pulled it back out to kind of see how it compared to some of the stuff in here. So this is this gold. You can kind of see it's a little bit, yes, less orangey than Half Baked. But I do like Half Baked, but it is pretty much a dead-on dupe for the gold I have in my Tarte Rainforest After Dark palette. So I will swatch those next to each other. So, oh no. I don't even remember which one's which, but you can tell just how similar they are. I think Half Baked is, I think this one is Half Baked. and this one's from the Rainforest After Dark palette, but I could have it backwards. That's just how similar they are. So like I said, I really love Smog. It's a beautiful bronze shade, and I really don't have anything like that. It gives a beautiful bronzy smoky eye when I do that look. Dark Horse, I really like it paired with Smog. Dark Horse is pretty unique to my collection actually, like looking at the other browns I have. It just has a bit of a different undertone. It almost has like a bit of, I don't know, it looks a little green maybe? I can't even really describe it, but I did swatch all my other dark shimmering browns and it was unique, but you know, on the eye, blended out, I'm sure it wouldn't be that different, but I do like Dark Horse. Toasted and Hustle I could really live without. Toasted is kind of a pinky shade and Hustle is kind of purpley. You can kind of see them right there. So I did an eye look with these two, kind of the same as the one I described with the Smog, where Toasted was on the inner 2/3 of my eye, Hustle was on the outer third, kind of blended a little bit into the crease. And I found that on the eye, it didn't look super pink and purple. It kind of got a sort of bronzy look anyway. It was kind of weird. It didn't look dramatically different from the look I had done the day before with this palette, and I don't remember if I had used Smog the day before or Half Baked with Smog. I also did the same kind of thing with Half Baked. I would do the gold and then Dark Horse or Smog kind of in the outer part. And it just like, obviously they're different colors, but the look it gave off didn't seem drastically different. I could definitely live without Toasted and Hustle. They're not my favorite. And then Creep and Gunmetal I can definitely live without. I have plenty of black shadows in my collection. And then Gunmetal, it's just too blue for me. I don't think I can ever... I know people have painted it and they make it work, but I don't think I'm ever going to be motivated to like try to make this work. So like I said, that's 6 out of 6, or 6 out of 12 I like. So the 6 that I do like and want to keep are Virgin, Sin, Naked, Buck, and Smog, and Dark Horse. The other 6 I could really live without. So I thought about depotting this and throwing away the ones I don't like, but that seems kind of silly to me also, because I don't hate a lot of the other ones. I don't hate Toasted, I don't hate Hustle. You know, I did use Creep when I had this open, it was easy. I feel like just throwing them away for the sake of throwing them away is kind of defeats the it seems a little wasteful to me. I don't mind throwing away shadows I don't like if I'm trying to pan a whole palette, but since I'm not trying to pan this, I don't get the point of just scraping things out. I think that's a little silly. So that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like I could live without this. You know, I do love some of these shades, but I do have similar shades to Naked and Buck in these lighter shades in other palettes. The one that's really holding me up is Smog. And so the reason that I'm a little hesitant to declutter this or sell it is because of that. I am afraid the same thing will happen with this palette that happened with my Naked 2 palette. So I used to have the Naked 2 palette. I had this one and that one, and I decided I didn't need both of them. And this was my this is the thing that got me really into makeup. I feel like I had some nostalgia attached to it, so I decided to declutter my Naked 2 palette, and only later did I kind of regret it because I realized how much I love cooler tone eyeshadows on me. So what I ended up doing was I slowly accumulated some of my favorite shades from the Naked 2 palette in singles. So I have this little mini Naked 2 palette. I love this thing so much. In fact, I think it makes me happier than the Naked 2 palette itself, which is kind of interesting. But the thing is, if I had paid full price for all of these, this would be like almost $80 worth of eyeshadow. Luckily I got them all for 50% off, so it's only $40, but the Naked 2 palette is $54 now, I think. So it's definitely makes more sense to have the palette than to buy the singles of the one you like. And there are a few other shades in the Naked 2 that I liked and I've thought about getting, but they're really not that unique. One of them is Verve. It's very similar to Sin, but it's a little less pink, I think. So I'm really happy with this, but I'm afraid if I get rid of my Naked palette, at some point I'm going to want a single of Smog, a single of Dark Horse, a single of Sin, a single of Naked, and you know, then I'll end up spending probably more than I would sell this for, or the same, and it's like, why go through all that work just so my inventory has fewer numbers in it? It doesn't seem like it makes any sense. So that's where I'm at with the Naked palette. I feel like I could live without it, but I love that Smog shade, and I do like a lot of the other shades in here, even though I could probably dupe some of them. So I'm gonna keep it for now. I might change my mind someday, but I'm still kind of meh about this whole palette as a palette, but there are shades in here I do really like. But the thing I realized about this palette is it's not a good everyday palette for me. I don't think it works every day, at least for me. I don't like a lot of shimmer. I felt like every time I used this, I had a very metallic, smoky eye that I just felt a little bit weird wearing on a daily basis. The only look I felt like I wanted to wear every day was the one with sin all over the lid and just naked and bug in the crease. And that's, you know, I can do that with a lot of other palettes, and, you know, it's not very different to put sin versus virgin on the lid, so I feel like for an everyday look I'm very limited with this palette, but I do really like it for a smokier eye or for going out at night. So that's kind of what I feel about this palette. I don't think I would ever want to pan it. I can't imagine doing that, and props to everyone that has or tried, but it's just not the kind of palette that I would want to pan. So I don't know, I'll keep it for now. You know, like I said, it's like right now it's the oldest eyeshadow palette I have. I do have a weird attachment to it because of that, and because this is what got me into makeup, and I do really like the half of it. So that seems worth it for me to keep, because I think I would want at least smog in a single if I got rid of it. And that would be $20 unless I could get it on sale again for $10, but I don't know. Why go through the trouble of trying to sell this and, you know, do this other stuff. I did find someone on the site where I sell my old makeup that had depotted ones of, you know, half of this, but like I said, it just didn't seem to make sense. Like, I have it already, I'm gonna sell it and buy the same thing from someone else and, you know, spend most of the money I would probably get from this anyway. So I don't know, like, part of me really, you know, is motivated to have like as few eyeshadows as possible, but then part of me is just like, I already have this eyeshadow, might as well enjoy having it, don't need to stress out about it. So that's a long explanation of my thoughts on that palette. I don't think I've talked that much about any of my other palettes in this project, but I'm glad I spent a month with it, and, you know, it is what it is. But I will say that towards the end of the month, I was just over it. I didn't want to use it just because I was kind of, you know, sick of doing the same look all the time with Sin, and I wasn't wanting to do that darker, smokier look with Smog every day. So I started pulling in this palette, which I was originally going to have be my palette for July. This is the Stila In The Know palette. It's their matte palette. And so I actually got to know this palette pretty well over the last month as well, even though I only used it like maybe the last 2 weeks. But I found I really love this palette. I wasn't sure what I was going to think. I love this Too Faced Natural Eyes matte palette is like probably my favorite matte palette if you ask me. But I feel like this one is really good for like a beginner, or it's very easy, you don't have to think about it. I do pretty much stick to each row. This is kind of pinky nudes, more neutral, and then a little bit warmer. You know, I don't have to think about it. There's 3 shades. That's all I use basically. And, you know, I could be a little bit more experimental with it. I just usually am not. This is kind of like my lazy palette, I guess. So I really love that. I think the shadows are great. But I feel like this is like a little bit of a more advanced matte palette. I feel like you have a lot more options with this. So I really like that it has this like kind of white shade. I use that to highlight. This one's very similar to my skin tone, so I use it to set my primer. And I use it on the lid a lot. Then in the crease, I can use Desert or Clay. Desert is a little bit more of a transition shade. It's a little peachier. It's not very dark. Clay's a little bit cooler. And then you can kind of like pick and choose. Like, do you want a dark, do you want a cool shade to put in the crease? Do you want a warm shade to put in the crease? You could put a little bit of this fire shade in the crease. It really gives you a warm eye look, and it's really pretty, and this shade is really unique to anything else I have. I can use gray in the outer V, I can use black, I can use dark brown, I can use this cooler shade. It gives me a lot more options, I feel like. So I wasn't sure I would want to keep this since I already have this palette, but I really do like them for kind of different reasons, and I think this is a great complement to a lot of my other palettes that don't have any matte shades in them. So I'm definitely happy. These are the only 2 matte palettes I think I need, I think they're the only two matte palettes I have anymore, actually. I still have my IT Cosmetics Celebration palette, but it's in my declutter pile. I'm trying to find someone that wants it. And then I do have this one, which is just kind of a good palette for traveling. So this is mostly matte too. So like I said, originally I was going to use the Stila for July, and I think I am going to still bring it in because I'm going to have 2 palettes for July, I guess. So my palette for July, my main palette, is actually going to be something I just got this past weekend, and this is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. So I'm not sure if I'm going to upload this video first or my haul for this month first. So I'll talk about, you know, where this came from in that video a little bit more, but I did go to Sephora. I went out of town to visit family unexpectedly last weekend and ended up going to Sephora with my sister and my dad, and she needed a bunch of things. My dad offered to pay for them, and he offered to buy me something as well, and this had been kind of on my mind, and it was there, and so I decided to get it, and I really have no regrets. I've only used it twice, but I really, really love it. It's very unique compared to everything else I have, so I feel like I have every color I could ever want, but the one thing I really didn't have a lot of was oranges and reds and pinks, and I never thought I really wanted oranges and reds and pinks, but my sister has a Dior Quint that has a red shade in it, and she was wearing it the whole time we were out of town, and I just was like, it looks so pretty, and she always talks about how much she loves it and how many compliments she gets with it, and it made me really kind of want to try red eyeshadow. And you know, I thought, oh well, I don't need this palette, I could just buy a single, but I think this palette is really great because, you know, if I just bought a single, I don't know how it would work with the other things I have, and I feel like this kind of gives me a lot of options. So I've only used it twice, like I said. Yesterday, actually, I was wearing a very kind of a similar eye look. I used this. I did my basic matte eyeshadow look. I had a light shade on the lid, browns in the crease, and then later in the day I was just looking at this and admiring it, and I took this little brush that came with it and I just tapped it in Love Letter and just added a little of that in my crease on both sides, and it just added something really different and unique. It did. If you looked at me, I don't think you would go, whoa, pink eyeshadow. It was very subtle, but it was very pretty, and I really, really liked it. So I'm really excited to play with this palette some more. And then the other look I did with it actually was kind of a purple violet smoky eye. I was looking up tutorials because, you know, this is a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I found one from, I think it was on Anastasia Beverly Hills' YouTube channel that was using, this was on the lid, this was in the crease, and then Primavera, and then maybe Antique Bronze. So it was a very purpley look, but it was so, so pretty. I loved it, and I just really love this palette so far, you know. I feel like there are a lot of very unique shades. There are a few I definitely could dupe in my collection, but I think over half of them I can't. You know, these oranges are really, or these warm colors are very unique, especially this kind of matte gold is so pretty. I really like this. And then the reds and the pinks, and then, you know, there are some more neutral shades I probably have dupes of, but I'm really, really happy with this, and I'm glad I picked it up. At least for now, but we'll see if that changes, you know, after a month. But, you know, I do think it'll be nice to pull in maybe some of these shades if I want to go for a little bit more of a low-key look. I'm going to be working a lot in July at my nanny job, at least for now. I have had some interviews and stuff for other jobs, but it's all up in the air. But if I'm nannying, you know, I'm not going to go in rocking red eyeshadow probably. So on the days I'm working, I'll probably wear this, and then I'll stick to this for nighttime or the days that I'm not working. So in the weekends and stuff like that. So that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will be back at the end of July or beginning of August to let you know what I thought using these palettes in July and let you know what I'm going to be using in August. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!